And now, please welcome your hosts, Amy and Trey Castles.
Hey everyone, it's Amy Castles.
Hello, hello.
We have a very special guest, Ben Blankenship. Say hello.
Hello, thank you for having me.
We're so happy, so excited, so happy. We're so excited and happy and honored to have you on our show. And Ben is going to talk about addiction and recovery. So I'm just going to give you the floor because you got an amazing story and I know it, and everybody's going to love to hear it.
Well, thank you. First, thank you guys for inviting me out. This is a great opportunity to have this platform to share my story and to just let people know that recovery, not only is it possible, but it's very in reach, and the steps that it takes to get there are not as technical as most would think. So introducing myself, I'm Ben Blankenship. I was born here in Tomball, Texas. I have lived 30 minutes from here the majority of my life. And I was born into a family that most people from the outside would look at as that's a normal family. Most families look that way from the outside. The majority of, and everyone on planet Earth has an addiction of some way, some form, some fashion. They have an addiction. It doesn't matter what it is, whether it's fishing, alcohol, playing baseball with your kids, whatever it is, you have an addiction. And I was born into one that has addictions that were not so healthy. They were drugs and alcohol. And so being born into that at 10 years old, I started smoking marijuana for the first time. It became my normal. It was a way of life because that's what my brothers did. That's what all their friends did. That's what everyone around me did. It was the normal of, hey, we're in junior high, we're going to do some cool things, and getting into those things so young, you don't realize where you're taking yourself so fast. And so I went from smoking marijuana to the age of 14. By the time I was 14, I had pretty much tried every drug you could possibly think of. There wasn't one that was off limits. Drugs at 14 years old.
And you're the youngest of four boys, right?
Yes, I'm the youngest of four boys. And so,
and
hey, try this.
Yeah, exactly. Well, my simple logic of thinking was I would see my brothers doing something or one of their friends doing something, and I would think to myself, well, they did it. They're still alive. I can do it. I can live. Little did I know the impact that it was going to have later on into my life. And so whenever like I said, by the time I was 14, I had tried cocaine, I had tried methamphetamines, I had tried acid, I had done ecstasy. Their pills, alcohol were a normal, everyday thing. To have a bag of weed in my pocket was more normal than lunch money. It was just a way of life. And to me, it was normal. This is what everybody does, so it's okay. And that was my logical thinking. And I got away with it for quite some time. I mean, I'm still alive today. So, but by the time I turned 18 years old and I was old enough to be arrested, got arrested. Today, I think I had a friend ask me not too long ago, how many times have you been arrested? And I started looking it up, and I think it's around 47, 48 times.
Are you serious?
No
Absolutely.
way.
Yeah. So the majority of those were neglecting tickets and stuff that, I was like, well, I'm going to buy weed. I'm not going to pay the ticket, So I just neglected that. But eventually you get caught and you end up in a system. Going to jail was normal for me. Montgomery County Jail. I'm friends with all those guys now that I'm sober. I live on this side of the law and I do what I'm supposed to do every day. But those guys know me because they spent the majority of my life. Every year I would go to Montgomery County Jail. They knew me. Hey, Ben, what's up? You're back.
You had a membership card.
I did. And they definitely left the light on for me all the time. But anyways, so I don't like to elaborate on the drug part of my life, but yes, I was an addict. Every drug was available. They're always going to be available because that's just the way it works. And so the last time that I was arrested was June 2nd, 2018. That was my arrest date, my sobriety date, and my rescue date.
Wow.
I got rescued that day. I didn't get arrested. And so I got into jail that time, and as many times as I had been to jail before, I would, tell myself, hey, I'm going to stay sober this time. I'm going to do everything that I can. And I get out and I screw up every time. And so I blame my success on the same thing that Brad Pitt blames his success on, and it's reading. And I became a reader while I was incarcerated. And as a kid, you couldn't pay me to read. And so there's nothing else to do in there. So you want to keep yourself busy. And I remember finding a magazine somewhere, and there was an article in there about Brad Pitt. And I started reading it, and I was like, and they asked him, what do you blame your success on? And he said, reading. And I was like, Brad Pitt, pretty boy, reading? Like, how is that, So he said in there, if I would have never started reading, he said, I would have never read a movie script. Wow. He said, I wouldn't be who I am today. He said, I worked at a coffee shop and somebody handed me a book and told me it was a great book. And I started reading. And he said, and I developed a love for reading. And as he did that, obviously Brad Pitt wouldn't be who he was today.
Mm-hmm. With some good genetics too.
Not too bad.
Real good.
I'm
genetics.
glad you see that. So, all of these steps that I'm going to try to share in this short period of time were God's hand in my life. He was opening my eyes. He showed me the way to success by a man that I never met, Brad Pitt. And so when I read that, I was thinking to myself, well, that's pretty interesting, for him to be successful as he is today, just from reading a book. Maybe I should start reading. And so the first book that I read, I was a small little book by James P. Gills, and it was called Love, and it was no thicker than this right here. And I just wanted to read it from front to back to say that I've read a book from front to back. I was 28 years old when I did that in jail. And after that, I would, when I would get incarcerated, I'd start reading. And so I read an incident that happened while I was incarcerated. I went to the book cart and I'm looking for a book, and I couldn't find nothing I liked. And the pastor that was in there, as I'm walking off, he slaps this book in my chest and says, "You should read that." I was like, okay, thinking to myself, bro, you're not supposed to hit me, but okay. And so I take the book and I go sit down at the table, and a buddy of mine was sitting at the table, and he said, "Man, what's that book about?" I was like, "I don't know, you should read it." And I handed it to him, and he came over to me a couple of days later. Mind you, this guy was a sniper in the Army, or in the Marines, and he'd been through some things that he'd done some things that he wasn't happy about. And he comes back 2 or 3 days and he looks at me and goes, "How do you know me?" And I was like, "What are you talking about?" He goes, "The book." I was like, "Is it good?" And he's like, "Yeah." I was like, "Good, keep reading it." He comes back 2 or 3 days later and he's like, "Did you call my mama?" I'm like, "What are you talking about, bro?" He said, "That book is telling me exactly who I am." I was like, "Cool, keep reading it." He comes back a couple days like, "Man, this book is so awesome." I was like, "Really?" He looked at me and goes, "You've never read it, have you?" I said, "No." He goes,
I pawned it off on you.
"Yeah, I pawned it off on you to see what it was about." And so I get the book back, and it's a book called The Mentor, the Kid, and the CEO.
The what?
The Mentor, the Kid, and the CEO.
Okay.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Was this still your sobriety time? Like, or this obviously your sobriety.
Actually,
you're sober
this particular
you're
time was 3 arrests before my last.
Okay.
okay. So
All right.
this was all right. So, when you were in jail that time, how long would you be in there for?
That particular stint was 8 months in Montgomery County Jail.
Oh, that was an 8
Oh,
month.
wow.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I got out and went right back.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that time, with all the reading and the books stuff, you got out of jail, but you still committed some crimes, and you were not sober just yet.
No.
Okay, because you
No.
went back in 3 more.
Absolutely.
Okay, gotcha.
Yes.
All right, continue.
So
Let the man finish.
No, she's good. I love the question. So so he gives me the book back, and I open up the book, and the first words are, "Here I am again." I'm thinking to myself,
Here I
and the
am
kid's
again.
in jail again. Well,
Uh-huh.
this is my story. I've been in jail. I can't tell you how many times. The book is a really, really simple read of how this gentleman goes into these jail houses, and he gives somebody a book, and he tells them to read it. And he doesn't tell them who's reading it. I mean, he doesn't tell them what's in it, and he just says, "Read it, and I'm gonna come back next week, and I'm gonna visit you with you." Well, this guy's a CEO. He's also a mentor, and the kid that he hands it to is the one that is where the book is written from. The guy that hands him the book is the actual author of the book.
Oh, wow.
And so the story unravels that the kid follows the guy's directions, and he gets out, and the first thing he does is he runs down to this place where this guy jogs around this lake, and it's like a 7-mile jog that the guy says, "Hey, if you're really interested and you really want to better your life, when you get out, this is where I'll be jogging." So the guy walks all the way from jail to the place. But mind you, he hasn't eaten. He's wearing shoes that he shouldn't be jogging in. He gets there that morning, and he doesn't know that he's fixing to jog 7 miles.
Oh.
He keeps up with the guy, and the guy's like, they get to his car, and he gives him a bottle of water and a banana, and he's like, "So did you get any rest last night?" He's like, "I walked straight here from jail." The guy's like, "Wow, you actually want it." And he was like, "Yeah, like everything that you said in the book, make the list of what you want in life. Do the things like you're always going to start with a desire. You're going to have a desire to stop doing drugs. You're going to have a desire to start a company. You're going to have a desire to start a podcast, whatever it is. It starts with a desire, and then you have to come up with a plan. The first thing to do is to write it down." So the guy had done all this. He gets there. He runs the 7 miles. He's about to die, and the guy's like, "You really want this, don't you?" So I won't tell you the rest of the story, but the kid becomes successful. And as I read that, I was like, wow, this is me. This is something that I've done 1,000 times over. I've been to jail literally probably 47, 48 times. And I was never successful of exiting. Never. I would always return to my addiction because it was easy. The life is out there. And so while I was in jail, kids would come to the door, and I would see, this kid needs this book. And I'd walk up and hand him the book, and I'd say, "Hey, man, read that. But do me a favor, when you read the first sentence, don't come punch me in my face. Just keep reading." Of course, here I am again is the first sentence. So that was the first book that was beyond influential in my life. From then, I would read almost anything I could get my hands on. I had a stack of books. So my last arrest, I started collecting books. Started reading as much as I can, planning for my exit. Of course, so I had been incarcerated for about 1.5 years. At this time, I was in prison out in Jasper, Texas. And I had been writing my sister and asking her to please write me a letter, to please send me some pictures. She's a photographer. She's a very good writer. And I wanted to know what was going on with my family, with my nephews, with my nieces. They had gotten married. They had gone on missions. They had graduated high school, all this stuff that I missed because of my addiction. I always stayed away from my family, as most people do when they're in their addiction. They recluse. They isolate themselves. And you get to a point to where you know that you just stay away from the people that aren't doing those things because it's not cool. You know what I mean? It's not, you're not going to be comfortable around somebody that's sober whenever you're high.
Yeah.
And so I've been in jail, and I've been writing her and asking her, "Hey, please write me. I just want to hear from you guys. Just want to know everybody's okay. You know, please send me some pictures." And these are all these things that I'm fishing. Like, I saw God's hand in this, and I didn't see it right when I received the first letter from her, because the first letter that I got from her, it pissed me off. So she writes me a letter, and she tells me, "Hey, I read this book, and I learned a whole lot from it. And I'm going to send it to you. And I really feel like you could get something out of it. And it's called Codependent No More. And I was like, what does codependent mean? Does that mean that I can't depend on my family? What does the word mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I was so pissed off at her that I didn't get what I wanted. And I realized years later that that was still the addict in me, not getting what I wanted. Mind you, I'd been in prison. I'd been incarcerated for 1.5 years. I've been telling myself, hey, when you get out, stay sober, like make it happen this time. And I told myself that I wanted to be sober, but I hadn't really made up my mind. And so I wrote my sister about a 4-page letter telling her off of, hey, you didn't send me not one picture. Hey, you didn't tell me nothing about my family. Can you please? And I was pretty rude. And my dad always taught me, don't be rude to the females in your family, or to any female for that matter. And so I never sent the letter, but I kept it. And I got that off my chest. About 1.5 months later, the book shows up. And as I get it, I'm like, okay, my sister doesn't do anything without a good cause. Like, she always has a meaning and a reasoning in this. And she never just tells you, because she wants you to get it for yourself. And I knew that there was something in this book that she wanted me to get. And so when I got the book, I wrote her letter and I said, hey, I got the book. Thank you for sending it to me. And I'm going to read it and I'm going to get everything that I can out of it. And I sent that letter. So I read the book for the first time and the book pissed me off. Completely pissed me off even more because I was still an addict. I didn't know that I was still an addict because I've been sober for 1.5 years. I'm recovered. But I'm in prison. I don't have you have the option to do what you want in there, but you don't necessarily want to do that. And so I read the book the first time and I didn't get much out of it. And a buddy of mine saw me reading it the first time and he was like, are you okay? And I was like, no, I am pissed. Like, this book is pissing me off. The reason that it pissed me off is because the shoe fit. Everything that it was saying in there, it fit. It was directed at me. Mm-hmm. And I was reading the book from my standpoint of view. And the entire time, mind you, when I first started reading the book, the lady that's writing it says, yeah, I looked up the word codependent and there's no definition for it. And I go right back to whenever I received a letter from my sister of what the hell does codependent mean? And if she doesn't know what the definition is, how's she going to write the book? So I didn't get much out of it. I gave it to my friend. He's reading it for about 3 or 4 days. And I sat in my bunk for those 3 or 4 days at night. And I was so pissed off that I didn't get whatever it was my sister sent. I did not get the message. And being pissed off is what opened up my eyes. It's what was like, okay, read the book again, slow down, take your time, and figure out what the message is. And so the second time I got it back, I realized that as I read, if I pray before I read, it helps a whole lot. It opens up your mind. And I read the book from my sister's standpoint of view. My sister never had an addiction. So what did she learn from this book? My dad never had addictions. The rest of my family, all 3 of my brothers and myself and my mom, we all had addictions. And it was normal to me. Like, this is just way of life. This is what we do. This is how we get through life. This is how we cope with it. Mm-hmm. So I slowed down and I started reading the book. And I read it from my sister's shoes of what did she have to deal with? What did she go through as somebody that's never had an addiction? What are the decisions that she had to make through life because of us? So one of the relationships that bugged me the most throughout my life was my mom's and my sister's relationship. My sister started having kids, was the only one to have kids in the family. And my mom had a prescription pill problem. And whenever mom was sober, mom was the greatest mom. I'm sure you remember her. She was the greatest mom on the planet. And whenever she would take her pills, she is now an addict. Mm-hmm. And So that was a cycle that we dealt with. Well, to me, that was normal. That's mom. That's just who she is.
Mm-hmm.
I have my addictions. Nobody's mad at me. So like, why are y'all gonna be mad at mom? Like, leave her alone. You know. My sister started having these kids, and she had to protect them. And so when mom was inebriated, she would say, "Mom, look, I love you, but you can't come around my kids." And that always pissed me off because that's mom. Like, how you gonna tell your mom, hey, you can't come around on Christmas or Thanksgiving? And it seemed like those were always the times that mom would take her pills because she was nervous. She had things that she was dealing with. She had things that she was trying to cope with from a child, trauma, serious trauma. Her dad was very abusive. And so I was always mad at my sister. And I would think to myself, man, that's really messed up. You tell mom she can't come to Christmas, you know? So as I'm reading this book, it starts talking about these things that I'd never even grasped the concept of or even thought of, and they were called boundaries. And to me, as an addict, anything goes. Like, it's okay, whatever. You know what I mean? This is just how life is.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started talking about these boundaries, and I was like, okay, boundaries. So you set boundaries with things, places. Okay, so things and places. I'm not allowed to do drugs anymore if I want to be sober. Those are things that I got to get rid of. I probably shouldn't go over to the dope house. Probably shouldn't go buy any more dope.
It's kind of a step
and
one
then
boundary.
I realized that, okay, well, all my friends, like at this age and this point in my life, everybody I know does drugs. And I love these people. Like, these are some of these people I still love to this very day. I will always love them, but it doesn't mean I have to go around them.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that I have to be in their presence to love them. I can love them from a very far distance. And so as I'm reading this and I'm grasping it and I'm starting to understand these boundaries that I have to set for myself if I want to be successful. If I never, and here was my number one driving source. I'm sitting in prison and I don't want to come back. This place sucks. And so as I'm reading, and then it starts talking more about detachment. How do you detach yourself from these things, these places? And the hardest one is people. People that you love. It's okay to set boundaries. It's okay to say, that's not okay. Whatever it is you're doing that's not aligned with the direct path of my success, it's okay to tell people you love, hey, man, look, I love you, but please go do that over there. Please stay out of my way. Because they're going to drag you down. They're going to pull you to the side. They're going to distract you. And so as I'm reading this and I'm getting through the book, I'll never forget the life-changing moment that I had. And so I'm sitting there reading it, and I started thinking about my mom and my sister's relationship that always bugged me so bad. And I realized that my mom was one of those people that you have to detach from. Granted, my mom had passed away at this given point in my life, and so I didn't have to make that tough decision, but my sister did. She had children that she was trying to raise to where they weren't exposed to those things, to where they didn't have the same logical thinking as Ben of, oh, all my uncles and my grandma, and they get high. It'd be okay for me. She had to protect that. And if you've ever met one of my sister's kids, she raised some pretty good human beings, and they're successful in life, and they know that that's not okay. And right then and there, I thought to myself, wow, what a tough decision that was for my sister to choose her new family, her husband, her kids, now her grandkids, over her old family, her mom, her own mom, and her brothers. And then I realized, wait a minute, I was one of those people too that she had to protect them from. And when I realized that, and I asked myself, Ben, if you had children, would you have been able to protect them from your mom? And I gained such a respect for my sister in that moment that I was like, wait a minute. My entire life was not normal. this addiction that I accepted at the age of 10 because everybody else around me did it, it's okay to actually say, this is not okay. And I realized right then and there, that's when I was said, okay, I'm going to get sober. Because if I ever do have a kid, there's no possible way I would ever allow any one of my friends that were from my past life to ever be around my child. And if that's what I want, then this is what I have to do. This is a boundary that I have to set for myself. My sister, being one of the greatest examples in my life, she has her struggles. She gets through life just like everybody else. She has a handicapped son that has a traumatic brain injury that those times were tough for her. And she never turned to drugs. She turned to God, to her husband, to the church. And she found outlets to where she could express herself, where she could strengthen herself. And so today I've been 120% sober for almost 5 years now. And wow. I've kind of built this platform of people know me for sobriety. They, when they think of Ben Blankenship, they think barbecue, sobriety, or Barsh Auto Services.
Barsh Auto Services?
Barsh Auto Services. Yes, it's a company that a very dear friend of mine, Buster Barsh, he owns it, and he actually recruited me to
Buster Bowers?
Buster Barsh.
Barsh, okay.
Yes.
Wait, I'm sorry. Are you saying bar shadowing services?
No, Barsh Auto.
Oh,
yeah.
I'm like, are you shadowing somebody at a bar? Is that the right temptation?
Not. No, absolutely not. Barsh Auto Services.
Okay.
So
like that would be.
When they think of me, they think of those three things, and so I get phone calls all the time. You know, hey, look, I see that you're sober. I see that you're doing it. Can you help me? And I've learned the ins and outs of addiction. You'll hear me say that I'm a recovered addict. Now, that first year and a half that I was in prison, I was recovering then. Today, the answer for me is no. I'm not allowed to use substances. I'm not allowed to use alcohol. I'm not allowed to use cigarettes. I'm not allowed to use anything or put anything in my body that is going to distract me in any way, shape, form, or fashion. And so I have these outlets that I use. And when I read this book, it helped me understand that to set these boundaries, and what I tell people is, you over here, you have your not okay basket, and you take all the things that are not okay for you. Drugs, being a drug dealer, those people that you did drugs with, you take all those things and you put them over here in this basket. And this is your not okay basket. You're never allowed to go over there and get anything out of them. Your friends are over there, your mom's over there, all these things and these people. And people are the hardest one to put in that basket because you love people.
Yeah.
But it's okay to put them in there. And you can wave at those people and say, hey, I love you from a very far distance, but you can never go over there and get anything out of that basket, or you're going to fall. And then you have, this is my okay basket over here. These are the boundaries that are okay for me. These are my tools. These are the things that I'm going to go to every day, and I'm going to use these things. And so for me personally, over here, I have reading, of course, that I try to do as much as I can. I have church. I have my family. I have a very select set of friends that are in this basket. And then I have the gym, which is one of my biggest therapeutic sanctuaries for me.
You said on Facebook the other day, you go, it's been brought to my attention that someone criticizes my time in the gym, that I'm in there an hour and a half. And you said, it's actually more like 2 to 3.
Yes, absolutely.
I loved the way you said that. That was awesome.
And so that's where I go and I strengthen myself in every way, shape, form, and fashion. And this okay basket is your tool bag. And just like if you're a carpenter, you're going to go with your tools every day, because that's how you make your money. That's how you strengthen yourself. And so I have learned a whole lot about addiction and addiction recovery, and more so how to maintenance it, because every day is a struggle for everybody in life. It doesn't matter. Life is a struggle. This place is tough. And you have to find your outlets. And so I had a very dear friend of mine call me up maybe last year while I was working at the auto service place. And he says, hey, man, I have a friend that has a sex addiction. And I was like, okay, never dealt with this one before. Let me give it some thought. I said, let me give you a call back. I called him on my way to lunch, and I'm leaving for lunch, and I'm going to the gym. I said, hey, meet me over at the gym. And I said, I want to talk to you. And he's like, okay. By the way, the friend's me. I'm like, okay. And on my way there, I'm thinking to myself, yeah. And I was thinking, wow, that took a lot of courage for him to say that.
Yeah.
And I was thinking to myself, addiction is addiction. Addiction is addiction. It doesn't matter, like I said, if it's fishing. If you fish entirely too much and your wife's fixing to leave you, you got to weigh that out. You know what I mean? Which one do you want? You'll be able to eat forever, but you'd probably be eating alone,
What good is that?
So on my way there, I realized that addiction is addiction. And so the number one thing that you have to do, obviously, is you have to delete whatever it is. And being his was, sex addiction. There's an app that you can download on your phone to where you'll never see anything naked on your phone ever again, and it's pretty simple to do. It's a simple step. And so on my way there, I realized that all I have to do is just tell him the simple steps that I took. And so I said, look, man, obviously sex addiction is your thing. You're going to have to delete everything that you have on your phone or your computer or anything. Like, you have to remove yourself, just like I'm not allowed to go to the dope house. That's not okay for me anymore. So that's the first step. You want to get rid of whatever the addiction is. Then you have to find outlets. And so I actually, when I was about 21 years old, I had been using methamphetamines for about 2 years at the time. And I woke up one day and I asked myself, Ben, what is real in your life? And I know this was God talking to me. And because it was so distinct, and I'll never forget it, I asked myself, Ben, what's real in your life right now? And I had like $3,000 in my pocket, but that money's not real. It's drug money. I didn't have a real job. I had plenty of dope to sell, but that's not a real job. I had plenty of people that surrounded me, but these people are not my real friends. And before I got to that fourth finger, I was like, that's enough not reals in my life. I think I'm going to walk away from this. And so I went and woke my buddy up and said, hey, man, I'm leaving. I said, I'm going home. Don't call me. And he's like, what are you talking about? I said, you heard me. I'm going home. Don't call me. I'll quit. He's like, you serious? I said, yeah, absolutely. So I'm walking out the door and I put my backpack on. And I'm walking down the road, and it was like my mom was talking to me. And my mom was still alive at this time. And one of the things that I was always so grateful for is that my parents did have a home where I could go home and go to sleep. And I remember my mom telling me that every addict is always going to trade one addiction for another. So find a healthy habit. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I love chocolate milk. So I tell myself, very random, very simple, very cheap. So I tell myself, Ben, go home, get yourself some sleep, eat. When you wake up and you have some cravings, trade your old habit, your methamphetamine habit, for chocolate milk.
Like a Yoo-Hoo or like chocolate milk?
I actually like Oak Farms. It's better.
All right, there you go. All right.
It's cheaper. It's $1. So I told myself, trade your methamphetamines habit for chocolate milk. And so I would wake up, and if I had a craving, I would get in my truck over there in Montgomery, and I'd drive down to Montgomery, and I'd grab one chocolate milk, and I'd drive home, and I'd drink it. If I had another craving, I'd get back in my truck, and I'd drive back to the store, and it was much cheaper than methamphetamines, by the way.
Yeah.
But I literally quit doing methamphetamines the first time by trading one habit for another, and I found a healthy one, chocolate milk. And there's a lot of times I drove to the store and got a lot of chocolate milk, but it worked. As simple as it was, it worked. And I quit methamphetamines for 10 years. On my own, no rehab, no nothing. Just said, okay, one day I'm done. So as I come home this time from prison and I had made up my mind, and one of the first things I did was get on my social media and I tell everybody, hey, look, this is the life that I'm living. Don't come at me sideways. If you ever owe me money, I don't want it. I'm moving on. Only one person reached out to me and asked me if I wanted something. I said, hey, man, don't ever ask me that question again. And he was like, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know. And I'm like, yeah, you did, Mm-hmm. So I learned to set those boundaries for myself and say, these things are not okay. I cannot do them anymore. So I learned to delete that from my life. And I learned to trade my old habits for my new ones. So like I said, my 5 to 6 main outlets are reading, church, my family, my friends, my wood shop, and the gym. And so I go to that tool bag every day. So just like the other day when I said on Facebook, somebody ridiculed me and they're like, oh, you spend a lot of time in the gym and doing this and doing that. And you have all these dreams. And yeah, I do have a lot of dreams and I'm going to tackle those things. And the gym is where I get my strength. This is where I stay strong.
I had this whole vision of you being in the gym and strengthening your body. And it's like I was thinking what you were thinking. I don't know if this is true or not, but as you're strengthening your body, it's like you're strengthening your mind, you're strengthening your spirit. Yeah. And so every rep that you don't want to do, it's like there's a motivation behind it. It's not just a vanity thing. It's not just about size. It's like, no, I'm literally strengthening my body in more ways than just the physical aspect.
Yes.
Does that ever run through your mind while you're there?
Absolutely. I was talking to a friend of mine actually just last night. And so I keep my earbuds in at the gym, and just as everybody else does. And most people are listening to, some kind of hype music, Pantera or Metallica or rap music to get them going. I'm listening to Dr. Wayne Dyer. And
I love it.
It's a meditation for me. It's where you continue to move towards motivational things. Anything that you invite into your life, it's going to have an impact. It doesn't matter what it is. So as I told my friend with the sex addiction, hey man, pick your outlets. I don't care if it's wood whittling. I don't care if it's fishing. I don't care. Just make sure they're healthy. Mm-hmm. He's been clean for like a year and a half now.
That's amazing.
And he has a beautiful girlfriend and life is good for him. And he beat it just by, and the one thing that I recommend everybody, read Codependent No More. It's not about addiction. It's about learning to deal with the trauma that most of us don't realize that we experienced as children. And that's why people are addicts. They're not addicts because they woke up one day and said, hey, I just want to, get high and ruin my life. That's not.
Sounds fun.
Yeah. I mean, but that's how it happens. It's some kind of pain. It's some, just as well as my mom. Like for 2 or 3 weeks, my mom was perfectly fine. It was a normal mom, great wife, great grandmother, everything. But then she had these issues from her dad, things that he did to her and all of her siblings that haunted her, that she had to deal with, and that was her escape.
Yeah,
that was her outlet, and she never figured out how to say, can I do something different? Mm-hmm. She dealt with it the best that she could, just as most people are doing the best that they can throughout life. But learning to deal with the trauma that you have experienced as a child is you're going to turn to one thing or another because you want to escape that pain.
And it could be work, sugar, shopping, hoarding. It could be exercise. I mean, exercise is a wonderful thing, but for some, if it's getting to a point where it's controlling your life,
yes.
Anything that's going to be over the top, cause some harm.
So you never want to do anything
porn.
Too much and excessive use. And so I never try to tell anybody what their addictions are. I never try to tell anybody, hey, do these things. No, pick your own outlet. Just like I told my buddy, hey man, pick your own outlets, whatever it is. I noticed that he started taking his son to the gym first. Started getting his son in baseball, started spending more time with him. And it's a matter of buying your time throughout life. That's all it is. And so what are you going to buy your time with? Are you going to continue to be, an alcoholic, drug addict, whatever, which all lead to the same places? You're either going to die. There's no two ways about that. You're going to end up in prison, or you're going to choose to find rehab or just figure out your own rehab.
Yeah.
That's where addiction leads. So everybody, nobody's excluded.
Can you tell us about My Brother's Keeper?
Absolutely. So My Brother's Keeper is something that my brother Daniel and I and Davis, but Daniel and I specifically we missed out on about 10 years of life because
Together.
Yeah, together, because I would either be in my addiction and he would be sober, and I wouldn't invite him over because he's my brother. I didn't want to put that on him, or I would go to jail and he would be out. I'd get out, he would go to jail, and this cycle had happened. But something that it's overwhelmingly to think about it. Daniel, he's always been there for me.
Mm-hmm.
So during the time of incarceration, every week I would get a letter from Daniel. I would get money put on my books once a month. He would do my time with me, and he would always help me, no matter how much he was struggling. I got the opportunity to return that favor when he was incarcerated this last time over a crime that he didn't commit. And it almost cost him his life. It was very scary for all of us. Obviously, we've lost Davis this last year. And so we thought that Daniel might get life in prison. And we did a whole lot of praying. Some things were introduced to his life. Some people literally walked into his life inside of a jail that literally was God's hand. And so I got the opportunity to return the favor. I made sure that my phone was on at all times. He could call me every day. I made sure that every time I got paid, I put money on his books. Before Davis died, he went and bought this dirt bike. And Davis, loved motocross. He loved BMX. And it was what he lived for. And Davis had this addiction of methamphetamines. And everybody that knows Davis for the great person that he is. And when I came home this last time, he had bought this dirt bike, and it was a really cool dirt bike, but it was super ugly. And something broke on it, and we took it over to a friend of ours, a family friend, to have it just fixed. And I knew what I was going to do when we dropped it off, but Davis didn't know. So we dropped the dirt bike off, and we leave, and we're supposed to be just fixing like some ring seals on it or something. And I call our buddy and I said, "Hey man, I want to redo that bike for my brother. I want to remind him who he is." And Kyle Bennett, his best friend that had passed away, we decided to do a Kyle Bennett tribute bike to remind Davis who he is, who he rode with. Kyle Bennett was a world champion BMX rider, rode in the Olympics. And Davis rode right next to him. They were best friends. They grew up. His talent was beyond his own understanding. It was the same thing on a dirt bike. And so for about 2 or 3 months, we're telling Davis that we can't get the parts. We can't do this. Mind you, our friend Michael Peart is he's buying parts, and I'm sending him the money, and we're rebuilding this bike. And so I got the opportunity that we're going to put together the number plate. And we got permission from Kyle's mom to pull the number plate off of the number plate that's in the Olympic Museum right now. That's Kyle's number plate. And we changed it up just a little bit. And the MBK, my brother's keeper, was something that me and Daniel would always say to each other. I am my brother's keeper. I'm here for you. We're doing this time together. And so on the bottom of the number plate, I changed some of the letters to MBK. And so I got to deliver that bike to Davis 2020 of Christmas Eve. And he was just literally blown away that I took the time to do that. Not only did he he thought we were just, replacing some rings and a couple of tires and stuff like that. And I built him pretty much a factory bike.
Wow.
And whenever I gave it to him, we left, and he was like, "Man, why'd you do that?" And I said, "Well, I wanted to remind you who you are. You're a champion. You have the talent. You have the desire. You have everything that you need. You have a dirt bike now that's not a piece of junk, and you can go to the track and you can ride it and you can get sober." And he rode it one time, and it messed up just a little bit, and he parked it, and he went and got another one and rode it a few times, but Davis couldn't quit his addiction, and it cost him his life. And so I still have that bike. Well, that MBK of being my brother's keeper, it's my way of giving back. So while I was in prison, one of the steps that the Lord took in my life, when I was in prison and I started to ask for forgiveness, I'd never repented for something so hard in my life when I realized that I was a drug dealer, and I was a successful one. And so as a successful drug dealer, you affect a lot of lives, a whole lot.
Mm.
And my community itself, Montgomery County, some of North Harris County, and I realized the effect that I had on people's life for a bad cause. And I asked my Heavenly Father for forgiveness. And I remember in that prayer, something told me to ask him for the opportunity to give back, to help some of those lives when I come home. And he's answered that prayer abundantly. So my brother's keeper is not me. It is we. It is also my sister's keeper. My sister sent me a book. She saved my life. My brother Daniel. It's a community that has kind of taken off here in just Montgomery County, but we want it to go as far as nationwide and worldwide as we can, because the real war is drugs. There's no two ways about that. There we have all these wars going on oil and such, and the real war on our turf is drugs. There is no two ways about that. And so the community that we are building with MBK, my brother's keeper, it's a badge of honor. I'm sure that maybe you have somebody in your family that struggles with some kind of addiction. We all do. And so by purchasing one of these T-shirts or hats, it's you're sponsoring someone. You're saying, hey, I support someone that's struggling. I support someone that I love, and it's giving us an opportunity to fight this war. It's going to give us an opportunity to do as exactly as Malcolm did in The Mentor, the Kid, and the CEO. I don't think I'll ever be an author of a book, but I can buy them, and I can take them back to the prisons. I can take them back to the jails, and I can give back. I can be a light in this community of, hey, this is something that we go through together. You're not alone, because just like I was talking about earlier, whenever you get into your addiction, you're recluse. You take yourself away from, and you'll never feel more alone ever in your life than whenever you're in your darkest moments of your addiction, or sitting in prison whenever you feel like, man, I'm alone. And you really are. And in a lot of ways, God wants you to get to that point, to where you know that it's just you and him.
Mm-hmm.
But then he'll send you a book to help you read, to help you understand that you're not alone, that you can find the tools that you need. And there's people, everybody, there's not a person on this planet that I can think of that hasn't dealt with addiction in some way, shape, form, or fashion, such as my sister. Never had an addiction. She's dealt with it her entire life. And she saved my life by sending me one book. Mm-hmm. So what we're going to do, or what we are doing, is we're building a community of my brother's keeper. We will also turn that into my sister's keeper, my daughter's keeper. I have a very dear friend of mine that her daughter is struggling with anorexia. I was talking to her the other day, and she was like, yeah, I use a lot of the stuff that you tell me. to help my daughter. And as she said it, I was like, wow, I didn't even think of anorexia being an addiction. It is.
When I was thinking of the exercise addiction, that's what was going through my head, by the way.
Yeah.
But yes, absolutely.
And so it's a way to get active in our community. It's a way to let people know that you're not alone, that we can help you with the education of addiction recovery.
Yeah. Because there's a lot of shame behind it. People who are into an addiction, I imagine that there's a lot of shame behind it, and shame and guilt just from the people that I know. And I do hope that they know that there is a community that stands behind them, that they're not being looked down upon, because like you said, everybody has something.
Yes.
Absolutely. Everybody has something.
So I used to think the same thing. I used to think to myself, like, I'm never going to be anything more than a drug dealer. Like I didn't, it wasn't in my thought that I could do anything above that. Today, as you said that, the community that surrounds me is my community. It's all the people that arrested me. It's the judges that sentenced me to prison. It's the district attorneys. I have the phone numbers of the chief of police, the sheriff, all the district attorneys. These judges follow me on my Facebook. They applaud me. They tell me how proud they are of me. So this is the community that actually, these are great people. Like the guy that arrested me, the guy saved my life. Literally, he was just he was just doing his job. He just took somebody to jail that night. He saved my life. Without that man, I'd still be a drug dealer. Who knows where I'd be if I'd be alive. And so as we grow this community, I hope that it takes off like wildfire. I hope that the battle that we're fighting, it can be won. I know that it can be won. But we all have to stand up together and let people know that they don't have to be ashamed. That, man, I was a drug dealer. There's not a situation on planet Earth that I haven't been in that most people don't even want to think about. Yeah. And as I talk to people, I remind them of that. They'll start to share their story. They do that. They're like, oh, I feel so embarrassed. And I have to remind them, hey, man, like, I've been there. I've done that. I've walked that road. I've been to prison 3 times. I've been to jail more times than I can count. And it's okay. And these people that are in the justice system, they're doing their job. Like, if you're doing your part, they're going to help you. If you're not, they will gladly put you in jail because you don't want it. But as soon as you want it, we want to educate. We want to help people understand that it's not out of reach for you. It's very much in reach, and we want to educate them, and we want to buy books and take them back into the prisons and be a part of bringing life back to our world.
I love it.
I think that's wonderful.
Do you have a website?
I do not. I'm very close to launching that. I've had a very dear friend of mine helping me build it. I'm not too computer savvy. She is. Do
you have your domain yet?
I do. I have all the domain. The website is built. I think we have about 16 different shirts and patterns and hats, and she's very computer savvy.
So coming soon, people.
Yes. Yeah. How do Amy and I be a part of this, and how can the listeners that are listening be a part of it? Obviously,
my social media is one of the biggest tools that I have. It's what I call living sober out loud. That's what I do. I try to do something motivational and just something inspiring as much as I can, as often as I can. So follow me on my social media, Ben Blankenship. I have Instagram. I have Facebook.
We'll connect all those in this episode notes.
Yes, absolutely. So once we have all the final touches done on the website, we will be launching this, and we have a very unique strategy of how we're going to do that. We're gonna do a pre-launch where everybody can order their hats and T-shirts and bracelets. And like I said, this is a badge of honor that you're supporting somebody in your community that's struggling with this. So all my friends that are on the other side of the law, the judges and district attorneys that, put me in prison, they're like, tell me when we're buying a t-shirt.
Yeah.
So we're
I want
going
the
to
hat.
Yes, I love it.
So everybody, you are getting a sneak peek. It's a little
Yes.
premature for launch just
Yes.
yet, but you're getting a sneak peek of what's to come.
Yes.
That's
And
exciting.
so the first delivery we're actually going to do downtown Conroe in front of the courthouse.
Okay.
This is where my story took its turn. All the people that support me, all the district attorneys and the people that I've mentioned will be there to support me, and we'll invite the news down there to let people know that this is what we're doing. This is a movement. This is something that it's a community that we are going to be a part of, and we're going to be successursual.
Awesome.
It's amazing.
Well, thank you so
Congratulations.
much for sharing your story. I am
Absolutely.
so moved and inspired, and it's just been an honor to be your friend. And I met you probably when I was about 15 years old, and you're a little bit younger.
Yeah.
How old are you right now?
I'm 41.
Okay. So you're only a year younger.
Yeah.
I was going to say, you're 40 something too.
42. Okay, so you were 1 year younger, but
Yeah.
I mean, we would go out to parties at your house and all four brothers were there,
Yeah.
and now it's down to two brothers.
Yeah.
And I've never got to meet your sister, but I just remember your family was all just so genuine and nice. I remember. Besides, drugs or alcohol that may or may not have been at the parties. You guys were all so nice, and Davis was so sweet.
Yes.
He was always so nice, and he was really nice to me.
Yes.
Anyway, so I've loved seeing your story, and I love listening and reading your blog. I mean, it's basically like a blog. You share a lot, and it's inspiring. So thank you. Thank you for coming
having never
on.
met you, and this be the first time, it's humbling to hear your story. And just, I mean, I see your compassion, I see what you've gone through, but I also see where you're going, and I get chills thinking about it because, like we talked about before, I've had friends. We all have friends that have struggled with addictions, and they all find their different outlets. To know that this is something that people can go to now to get help, and I love the name, and I love the history behind it. It's going to empower and help so many people. So I'm excited for you.
And I see a book coming, just saying.
Yes.
I see a book coming.
I've been pushed in that direction a few times. So thank you guys so much for having me. It's been an absolute honor, and I look forward to things we do in the future.
Absolutely.
Thanks everyone for listening. Have a wonderful day. Bye.
Thanks for listening to another episode of According to the Castles with Amy and Trey. Be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts so you never miss an episode. To stay up to date with the Castles, follow Amy on Instagram @acastles. Until next time, have faith, enjoy life, and love abundantly.